board, we cannot go, we have to be careful how we promote a referendum. We don't have the ability to go out and, as a board, encourage the voters to vote on a referendum. We can't do that. We put it on the ballot and we put it to them to vote. So there's that fine line between us, voting for it and saying it's a good idea, but we can't go out as a body and to encourage everyone to vote for this. And that's always the difficulty with these type of items. With that being said, I'm in favor of the referendum.
Okay, appreciate that. And a 10 to 15 year payoff.
I would say 15 year. Again, I like the 10-year would be ideal, but I think unfortunately the amount that our citizens, especially those individuals on fixed income, would have could be detrimental, and I think we'd have a difficult time passing it at a 10-year. I think 15 years is what I would recommend.
And just to elaborate a little bit on your comment about what we can do as a board, and when we get to that point, we'll ask council, we'll get the final details, but the situation that we have faced, myself and the prior board with the home rule and the tax referendums, is that the law prohibits us from spending government resources to advocate for or against a referendum. What that means is I can't write an article and put it in smoke signals and say, dear residents, here's why you should vote in favor of the street bond. I cannot do that by law. I cannot write, dear residents, here's why you should not vote for this referendum, because it's using resources. I can't put a flyer together and have the village mail it out to people in favor of it. I can't pay for the printing with that or the postage. So there was a suggestion last week about block captains and a lady who volunteered to go door to door. That's what it's going to take. It's going to take a group of citizens who want to reach into their wallet, come up with some money, and put things out there to convince all of the people. And it's not just going to be people, individuals can talk to individuals, however they do that, but we are restricted. We can present, here's the pros and cons, we can go down the middle, but we can't advocate for or against it. So that's just, it's a confounding thing, and I described it back on the prior referendums. It's like being in a straitjacket. We're not home ruled, and even when we try to do something for ourselves, we can't spend any money even to try to educate people why it should be for something.
Rich, could you or I pay to have the flyers copied, or pay for yard signs and put them in our yard? I mean, we can do things.
As individuals?
As citizens,
we can
right?
do that, correct?
Yeah, of course, individually, yes.
Yes.
So we just can't, as a board, using village funds.
Right, we can't use.
But we
those
could be
funds.
block captains if we wanted, or lieutenants, or
Yes,
Indian chiefs, or whatever. Indian soldiers.
princesses and whatever. But anyway, that's, so I don't want to belabor that point. When the time comes, we'll get to that. But that is that's another hurdle that has to be addressed. I wish it were otherwise, but anyway, Trustee Hinshaw, over to you in terms of how you propose to finance a.
I want to respond a bit to what Trustee Bailey said about depreciation. I think that is important, and I think that we as a board, or we as a village maybe better, 2 years ago put water depreciation in at $94,000 a year, and I believe the water projects are almost self-sufficient because we have $250,000 roughly in the money saved. We can do one of those projects, and in 3 years we can do another, and in 3 years. So I think in 10 years we can do all the water projects. Now, the sheet said 2 years, but maybe we can stretch that out for 10 years. So I think it is important to do that, but it does mean cutting something else, because you're right, the pie is not getting bigger, it's just how it's divided up. But I think we need to get to that point. So that's something that I know we haven't talked about it, but if whatever we do fails, I think contingency planning or other planning may come into play at some point, because I don't think we can, if it fails, that we can throw up our hands and say we can't do it. I think at some point we have to do something. But getting to the answer to the question, I support the 10 years I think $15 a month on a home value or residence value of $250,000 is not that much to ask for a resident.
Okay, well, thank you.
Did you ask?
Yeah, or you didn't get.
Oh, I'm sorry, I started here. Norm, that's right, thank you.
I think it's a foregone conclusion, the way it looks, that we're gonna be repairing streets, and I don't disagree that they should be repaired, they should be repaired. And as far as the road bond, I think that's probably the only way we're gonna get the money for it. So if we're gonna go that route, I would think either the 15 or the 10-year bond. But I also have to agree with what Brian said. As far as going back to when we had the home rule issue up the last time, and if we put it on the ballot again sometime, although I don't think it should be on the same time the road bond is. But if we put it on again, it's gonna be the same problem. People wanna know what we're gonna make out of it, money-wise, if home rule passes. Well, in my mind, that's something we can't tell anybody. We're passing home rule, so we have the authority to do something that comes available in the future. We don't know what it's gonna be. We didn't know what it was gonna be the last time, and we wouldn't know the next time. If we put it on the March ballot, we're not gonna be able to tell anybody how much money that's gonna bring into the village. We just know it's gonna bring in some money. The other thing that I guess sort of bothers me, counting on a meeting last week, we had, I counted right, I think we had approximately 80 people here, which is approximately 2% of the village population. So it looks like we're going to have to make a road decision here. I know practically all the people here, if I read your comments and questions right, they all wanted the streets repaired. Well, fine. We've been criticized in the past for not giving the people of the village what they want. So they say this time, let's give them the roads, this is apparently what they want, but it's 2% of the people speaking for 100% of the village. So that to me is what may bring a lot of people, if they vote at all, they're gonna vote against it, because number one, it doesn't affect a lot of people in the village. As far as the good part of it, they're gonna have to pay for it, but it may not affect them. But if we're gonna go with the road bond issue, which I'm in favor of, I would go to the 15 or 10-year bond.
Okay. You said 15-year, I'm sorry.
Or 10.
10 or
either one.
Appreciate the comments from all of you, and I will just add this to discussion. Having been mayor for 6 years, my first attempt on trying to address the downturn in the economy and the shortfall in village finances and all the things that were gathering on the radar screen and some that weren't yet at that time was to attempt to get the home rule authority. And the home rule has its benefits, and the home rule has the downside, the big downside, as pointed out to a lot of people courtesy of the Illinois Realtors Association, is that the village board itself could then vote to raise property taxes. And their opinion, and apparently shared and convinced enough people that that's too much authority for a board like ours to have, that we could sit up here and take a vote and have a majority of, 4-3 vote, and the next thing you know, your property tax goes up. With that downside, the benefits were that we could impose alcohol, tobacco tax, gasoline sales tax. We had an opportunity, it was discussed a couple of years ago, some property down 70th Place at the west end. Nobody sees it, but every now and then you'll see a truck coming out of one of the repair stations there in 70th Place that we could have regulated that and sold overnight truck parking medallions at $100 per truck per month, and do that math, and that's how much income we could have been getting, and then multiply that by 12 months per year for a truck, for example. And what if we gave 100 or 200 medallions out? We were talking about some sizable income to the village. We can't do that because we don't have the home rule authority. There was an opportunity to have done that, but that went away because we just couldn't pull off that mechanism. Couldn't rezone it we couldn't enter an arrangement where we rezone it. That was part of the problem, to let people use their land in that, I forget what it was, zoning district, but because it currently as that land is zoned, they're not allowed, and get a gratuitous payment that, an agreement, well, if you give me this rezoning or give me this special use, I'll be willing to pay the village. I'll rent my land for overnight truck parking, and I will pay the village X dollars per month to let the trucks park here. And the problem with that is everybody else in that same zoning district could then have the authority to rent their property to overnight truck parking, and we have no mechanism to require them to make a payment to the village. So why would you do that? How would you folks like to see 500 trucks a day coming out of, like, Joliet Road and the toll road, and coming up and going all different directions? So, the prudent thing was to, I wish we could, but we didn't. But anyway, that's the home rule discussion. It was also a big turnout, and there was good lobbying by the realtors against it, and it was also in 2010, the people were really suffering the effects of the downturn that started at the end of '08. But, nothing ventured, nothing gained, so we put that up there. I don't dwell on the fact of how many people voted no. I was more pleased with how many people got it and voted yes. And if we had that authority, maybe we'd have to, back then, we wouldn't be dealing with this issue right now. But for the present time, I live on a street that needs to be paved. I see people in the audience that are from areas of town that really need to get their street repaved. We've been working to that end, tried 2 times on a general referendum to address, as Brian Brook pointed out, multiple issues. It occurs to me, we could do a street bond for $2.5 million, and spread over 10 years. I don't have the numbers right in front of me, but an alternative to that would be, what if we did, what increase in the vehicle sticker rate would it take to generate $1 million over a 10 or 15-year period, and then we only have to go out for $1.5 million bond issue and say we'll get the other $1 million from vehicle stickers. Thinking it through, and I'm thinking out loud and kind of brainstorming with everybody. One benefit I see to that is people who have cars and use the streets ought to pay to maintain those streets. And so we put the burden, if a senior citizen household has 1 car and a younger family has 4 cars, well, I would say they're putting 4 times the wear and tear on the city streets, and maybe the funding ought to come from a vehicle sticker. Then I'll shoot the hole in my own argument and say, but you know what, when it comes to trying to borrow money and people aren't gonna, let's face it, people right now dodge the $50 vehicle sticker. What if it was 100 and more people start dodging? It's hard to guarantee you're gonna have this amount of money coming in, on the one hand. On the second hand, it was mentioned to me at some point, you know what, I would rather pay property tax than any other taxes that the village could impose on me. You're gonna get the money from me anyway. So if you please put it on a property tax, I can deduct it from my income tax. I cannot take a $50 deduction for a vehicle sticker. But folks, if you added $50 on your property tax deduction, wherever your tax bracket is, you get a benefit from that. So maybe the better thing is, whether people realize it or not, is to put the burden on the property tax. So I would support a road bond if that's what the trustees do, or prefer to do. The other thing about it, though, is I am concerned with people on fixed income, the elderly people in the village, retirement income. They don't have a lot of disposable income. And although things are starting to get better, you start talking to somebody who is, or look at a 70 or 75-year-old person, and ask them to pay more money right now just so we can pay the street off in 10 years, it's hard to say this, but you know, the reality, and I'm not making light of the situation, but folks, I'm 75 years old, what are the odds I'm gonna be here in 10 years to take advantage of this road? So for however many years more I've got on this planet, you know, let me keep a little bit more of that money you wanna take for the property taxes. So factoring that, trying to minimize the impact, I haven't heard anybody be in favor of a 20-year, nor am I. That is really an excessively high amount of interest to have to pay. I personally favor a 15-year plan. It's a little bit lesser burden. Trustee Henshaw, you pointed out about, you know, is it 10 or 15 bucks one way or the other? But we have to take into account their situation as well. Otherwise, they're not gonna support it. You might look out the window and say, hey, my street's fine, it'll last me 10 years, I only plan to live here 5 more anyway, and then I'm going to Florida. But a lesser burden, maybe they won't be so, if they don't come out and vote for it, at least maybe they won't come out and vote at all, which will help the other ones who want to support it. But that's my position on it. So, you know, at this point, let me go to the audience and get your, you've heard us talk about it and debate, and the discussion here is not whether we should have home rule or not. The discussion is the scope of the work and how we want to pay for it. I'll open it up to the audience. And please say your name and your address.
John Corcoran, 6417 Apache Drive. I must admit, you know, I was here for the town hall meeting and I saw this, I actually looked at it before. I didn't see a lot of stuff that I just saw. I know you said it, but I don't know how many people heard it or read what's really gonna get done to what streets. And we're really talking about full, heavy work on the option 1 streets. I think there's only one street in option 2 that's getting anything much more than crack fill. And then, you know, then the rest of the streets, it's all crack fill. I'm just concerned, I think Trustee Bailey mentioned it. Though, you know, crack filling is not gonna extend those streets 20 years. They're probably not 15 years, probably not 10 years. And you know, I think Trustee Walsh mentioned it at the meeting. This is a permanent cycle. You know, something fell off the tax bill a year ago. We probably should have had this conversation a year ago because nobody would have noticed it. But you know, I think we have to be really precise and understand what's the long-term plan. When are the next streets going to need to be done? How are we going to pay for that? And if it's inside of 15 years or inside of 10 years, I think that changes the whole conversation. Just my thought.
Good comment, thank you, sir. Anybody else?
Chris Smith, 6403 Arrowhead Court. I just want to say that with the experience that this board has had, with the exception of the 3 newest trustees, I'm very disappointed that our board has not had a plan throughout all these years. There has been no strategic plan, there's been no plan to repair our roads, to take care of our water, to take care of this building. It's just, we've been operating by the seat of our pants. We had money, we spent money on excessive legal fees. The Heritage Center has taken a lot of money, nobody's given us an accounting of how much that is. So I'm very disappointed that it's come to this, that there's been no accommodation for our streets throughout all these years. So now you're telling us to trust you. I don't trust that this board has done their job, Brian.
Well, here's my perspective. If people don't trust us, there's an election every 2 years and you get rid of us. The ones you don't want to get rid of. If you think we're abusing our trust, get rid of us. That's what the election is for.
Exactly.
But you can't sit there and say, I'm just never gonna give you any power to do anything because I just don't know if you're gonna abuse it. So I'm never giving it to you. So you're never gonna be able to do anything. That's so short-sighted.
Well, home rule is asking you
It's
to...
short-sighted because, you know, if you're sitting up in here and I think, you know, the The new trustees can respond. There's no secret fund that we're hiding. There's no money we're hiding. You know, I think people thought there was some secret fund we're hiding somewhere. It's not here. We don't have the money. You know, and to say, well, you people didn't plan for the street. We had no money. We tried to raise revenue.
Yes, we spent
we tried
$80,000
three
in legal
different
fees on a
referendums. We tried to raise
fence.
revenue to try to fix the streets. In fact, in the last two, we're gonna set aside X amount of dollars. We said the exact amount of dollars we want to set aside to have a road program every year. Put that money aside, and people voted it down. You know, to say the people who've been on this board more than 2 years or a year are foolish and didn't do their job, that's totally wrong. And I totally disagree with you on that.
Mr. Metz, whether you were aware of it or not, but long before you started coming to the meetings, Ed Stanton, the Public Works people, had information on paper, various jobs that needed to be done and how to do it. How do you think this plan got put together? Where's the starting point?
I don't know, I heard
You may not
computer
have realized it, but it was there. What we were facing with is things going south in general for the economy, downturn in the income, losing a police officer, we're trying to pay for it. We weren't just sitting here with blinders on looking at, oh, there's no street plan. There's a street plan. But you can have the best plans in the world, sir. If you can't pay for it, you know what your plan is worth? It's worth the big goose egg. That's what it's worth.
But we have spent money on other items that haven't gotten us anything.
We've spent money on items that have kept the village running. And in fact, the general fund, when I took over as mayor, was very deep in the hole. And slowly, through the downturn in economic, and you were sitting here when I read the numbers, we've gone from being in the general fund, folks, at a negative $700,000 plus dollars. Took a while. We're actually, the last audited report, at least the one that I referenced, I think it may have been through 2012, we're 90,000 into the good. And now, that's a big turnaround. I'm very, very proud of that and myself and the efforts of the prior board. Now, we spend money and didn't get nothing for it. Well, sometimes maybe that's true. Sometimes we spend money that we try to, I'll give you an example. You put a patch on a road that turns out to be a good patch, and you spend $30,000-$40,000 for that, and suddenly those people who look out their front driveway and say, you know, my street's in good condition, you know what their incentive is for voting in favor of a street bond? None, because their street's in good shape. But we're all in this together. We were fortunate that we had Blackhawk get paid with stimulus funds, and without batting an eye, the old board committed the $20,000 or so that we had to spend to get that $400,000 project. And the people on Blackhawk, and deservedly so, they got a nice street paved in 2009, and it didn't cost them or any other resident in the village any extra money. So spending money and not getting it done, I think you missed the whole point, quite frankly, I really do.
So you're saying we've been mismanaged before you?
And Ms. Coleman.
Carol Coleman, 129 Acacia Circle. I have a couple things. I know that this gentleman, Mr. Corcoran, did address, Plan 1, Plan 2, and Plan 3, and Plan 1 is big, and Plan 2 has a little more, and Plan 3. And I know what Crackville is. As a selling point, perhaps to the board, and maybe some of you really don't understand it quite as well, to people on Acacia Circle and Osceola Trail, they're getting Crackville. That's painting little black lines in the street. It preserves the roads, it helps it, but they're really not getting anything. I mean, you can say you're touching every street, but they're not really getting much of a benefit. The benefit, because other people are getting big streets done, and they need to be done. No objection to that. Crackville is an ongoing process. It needs to be done every year to every street, because that's what preserves the roads. Even when you do the Crackville, some streets all of a sudden deteriorate faster than others. But I guess my biggest question I have for you is, what's your solution if the referendum fails? Because there's a lot of people that don't know. What's the aftermath of that if it fails? Because you really do have to face that. Because people will ask that question.
be the eternal optimist, but I mean, I think the nice thing about this board right now is we've got a nice cross-section of the community. The new trustees have a lot of support, which is wonderful, and hopefully their supporters will get out and support this bond referendum. The old trustees have a lot of support as well. So, I mean, as far as, if there was mistrust in the past, if it existed, or if there were doubts, I think we've all come together, hopefully as a unified board, and this is an important project for the village. So Carol, I'm an optimist that it's going to pass. But, I mean,
Well, what's the answer?
the answer is, if it doesn't pass, we'll have to deal with it. I mean, the problem is, I think we need to put our resources and our time into communicating, and as, Amy brought up a great point, is explaining exactly where this money's going to. I mean, if anything, if there was any fault upon the board in the past, and I was on the board as well, is that everything we tried to do, I believe, especially when it came to the various referendums, were appropriate. But, maybe having a police officer and a road on the bond, maybe people got confused with it. So I think a single issue bond referendum is the appropriate way to go. If it doesn't pass, the reality is Carol, you know this, we don't have the money, and the roads aren't gonna get done, unless we talk about raising vehicle stickers, and there's gonna be a whole uproar about that. So, I think this is a unique opportunity. I think hopefully we'll get a lot of support from the community. And I think we have to put our efforts in to try to get this to pass. And if it doesn't pass, we'll deal with it. But I want to be the optimist at this point. So I'm going to say we're going to give it our best shot to make it pass, and then we'll deal with it when it does.
Let me ask our newest trustees, what is your suggestion as, if we put a street referendum, a bond issue on the ballot and it fails, what is your suggestion as to, we know this work needs to be done. Plan A fails, what's the plan B? What do you think it should be?
I think we've talked about some of the other revenue sources. I think vehicle sticker is the best one, but I think there are cuts that are hard to do, but there are ways to cut things out of the budget. And I know that's a hard thing to hear, just like Brian said, it may not be popular, but I think there are things that we can cut. I don't know that we can cut $300,000 or whatever the yearly depreciation should be, but I think there's some in there.
We're limited on our revenue sources, we're gonna have to come back to the drawing board and see what other revenue sources we're gonna be able to increase. Vehicle stickers, I don't know if there's anything else that we can do regarding the cell tower leases, if those can be edited or renegotiated. I believe those are coming up at some point. I don't know if there's any latitude that we have. We already collect taxes with the cell phone and the regular landline phone. I think we're maxed out on that because we're not home rule. But we're gonna have to really go back to the drawing board and see what other things we can do. And I think we're very limited, and I think our options are, you can probably count a couple fingers, our options. And people are gonna be disappointed, and that's just what we're gonna have to deal with.
Brenda, do you have?
Yeah, I don't think the vehicle stickers is gonna save us. There's a lot of people out there right now that are not paying for the vehicle stickers, paying $50 right now. We're not doing anything as far as reinforcing to make sure that they do pay. I think we should have roadblocks in there to show that, we really need that income. And that, so as far as raising the vehicle stickers, maybe we raise it to $100, but guess what? It's gonna be the same people paying for those vehicle stickers. The ones that are paying right now are gonna continue not to pay, as well as we're gonna even get the ones that are paying currently that are not gonna pay. And that, so I don't think it's not gonna be the savior as far as this. I really don't know what the solution's gonna be as far as if this doesn't, I wanna be optimistic. I think we have a great approach going about it. We got the figures out there. I think we're gonna need to go, as far as captains, on our own, and go door to door and talk to the people and inform them, give them the information that they're looking for. And I'm just gonna be very optimistic. What's the approach down if it doesn't happen? I don't know right now.
Reevaluate. Lauren, do you have any thoughts on a plan B?
Well, not really. So as I said, there's only one or two things probably we can increase. Well, stickers seem to be a
Brian, I asked you, but I think, and
You
I'll
know
give
my
you a
thoughts.
chance, I'm not trying to cut you out, but I think your answer is probably gonna be consistent with what you've already
I
said, so.
think everyone's heard me long enough.
I'll go past it if you'll grant me that.